It's fair to say that a soldier's bravery is unmatched. These individuals do the job so that the majority don't have to. They have courage, strength, and a lack of fear, going into situations that many of us will never see. It's for this reason that we should show them respect and understand that at the end of the day they're still human. Strange things happen to everyday people, as some of the most interesting stories come from those who have served in the military. The thread was recently put together detailing some of the strange things that military personnel have witnessed. This person detailed their story. This story isn't about me personally, but was told to me by my uncle. He didn't often open up about his military career for obvious reasons, but on this one occasion he decided to open up and tell me about one of his experiences. Perhaps this was the sole reason why he didn't want to talk about it. My uncle served in Vietnam and said that while out there he and his team would encounter what he can only describe as short people, describing them as being hobbit-like and covered in hair. He said that on a number of occasions these creatures that also had small feet would almost torment him and his team. This happened a number of times while they were on patrol. He said that although these sightings didn't last long, he was able to get a good look at them, describing them as looking primitive and being much shorter than the average human, but saying that they were much more hairy than the average human. I could see that this was tough for him to talk about, and by the way he was telling the story it was as if he knew how outlandish it sounded, but he was firm about what he saw while on duty, and said that he wasn't the only one to encounter these things. It's an interesting family story that I'll hold on forever. End quote. Although hobbit-like creatures running around and tormenting soldiers doesn't sound like it's rooted in fact, there's actually records of these creatures being encountered by soldiers who are stationed in a region. These creatures have been given the name of rock ames, or rather Pechitut when translated into Vietnamese, and have been recorded plenty of times. Dubbed Monkey Mountain, one particular spot appears to have attracted the eagle-eyed curious individuals who witnessed these creatures. Specifically, those who frequented Monkey Mountain began to expect to see or encounter these strange animals. Though despite those in the region being well-equipped, they also detailed that the rock apes also seemed to be one step ahead. The name rock apes was coined due to the reputation quickly built that when soldiers would throw rocks to these creatures, they would throw them back. Regarding their appearance physically, these creatures are described as a staggering 6 feet tall, with a strong build and being understandably intimidating threat to humans, further characterized through their large bellies, unproportionately large limbs, and hair ranging from brown to reddish in color. The rock apes hold a distinctive appearance to someone who knows what or who they're looking for. Those who have been fortunate, we might argue unfortunate enough to encounter these creatures, have reported seeing more than one, leading many to believe that the rock apes had a preference to live in large rooms and stay localized entirely to the jungle, living in relative peace away from human civilization, at least up until the breakout of the events that played out during that time. A rather alarming and concerning trait here is that these creatures do not appear to fear humans, with them being seen so many times throughout the area that soldiers would say that they would almost taunt them. Following the descriptions that began to flood in, the vast majority of reports were dismissed, with the plausible explanation being presented that perhaps the horror soldiers had witnessed had a devastating impact upon their cognitive abilities, with their minds simply giving an exaggerated, hyperbolic description of an orangutan, or more accurately, a group of them. One issue with this, though, is that the region's orangutan population has been extinct for centuries upon centuries. Limiting this as an explanation, the existence of this creature is still being debated. Another soldier detailed their story. While being stationed abroad, I got talking with someone who'd been staying in the room a few doors down, and they told me that I have nothing to worry about here, except from the woman in black that roams the corridors during the night. I didn't think anything of it, and thought that he was just messing around. It's important to note that there were 2 buildings that were separated from each other, with both of them having a corridor. You could see through the windows of each of the buildings and so see the corridors that were parallel to each other. So one night I ended up walking down the corridor and I can see in the corner of my eye someone who's walking down the other corridor. As I turned my head, I immediately froze. The other person walking down the opposite corridor was a woman dressed in blank, long hair and looked pale. When I looked at her, my heart sank. and I had a terrible feeling come over me. I ran back to my room with the hairs still raised on my neck. I got into bed and didn't tell anyone until morning. It was one of the worst experiences of my life." End quote. What's strange is that it appears that not only are there several cases of strange sightings of a ghostly female figure with long black hair wearing a long white or black gown, but these entities seem to appear all across the world in many different countries. This has led many to believe that this phenomenon can appear to almost anyone, and will usually take form when a woman undergoes a tragic event while remaining pure of heart. So what do you make of these interesting stories? The vastness of our universe and the space surrounding us leave scientists with countless questions. They are constantly attempting to delve further into the unknown expanse that stretches endless past our atmosphere and discover what lies beyond the realm of our understanding. Since the Large Hadron Collider first started up on September 10, 2008, it's been at the center of many incredible discoveries. As mentioned on CERN's website, is currently the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. The Large Hadron Collider consists of a 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets with a number of accelerating structures to boost the energy of the particles along the way. CERN, the European Physics Research Center, recently upgraded the Large Hadron Collider. The upgrade comes years after the collider managed to provide scientists with answers to a riddle when it confirmed the Higgs boson exists. Since being built, though, it's been at the center of a number of theories, with those around the world questioning the true nature of this giant machine. Just yesterday, someone was live streaming above the Large Hadron Collider when they noticed something strange. They described the object in question as being a set of stationary lines, saying that they didn't move, were hovering above CERN's complex, and that every so often each of the lights would turn on and off, but said that not at any point did they descend in elevation, and described the objects as being in the shape of a triangle or a boomerang. The live stream then started to gain traction as people flooded in to see what this thing was, while at the same time putting forward their own theories in order to explain it. The person who uploaded the live stream was there for over an hour, and they recorded the whole thing. One person said the following: "This is a little ominous, isn't it? There's a huge triangular-shaped object hovering above the Large Hadron Collider, while lightning is surrounding it. It's like a scene from a movie." End quote. One of the strangest things about this event was how the object just stayed in pretty much the same position, and it did this for all of the live stream, with some of the viewers asking how it could have done that. The strange object was made up of 4 lights that would occasionally turn on and off. At this moment in time, the size of this craft is not known, but some have guessed this anywhere from 40 feet to hundreds of feet in length. Interestingly, these triangle-shaped crafts are certainly nothing new, and for years now they've been reported in pretty much every country around the world. What they are, though, is still heavily debated. Some argue that these crafts are part of the latest stealth fleet of either the United States military or UK's military, or some users have questioned how we would have such a thing. Amateur researchers have also noticed how these things are never normally seen during the daytime. Although there have been a few photographs taken during the day, it still hasn't helped us to come to a definitive answer for what these things are, along with how they're able to achieve some of the things they do. There have been around 4,000 reports of the triangles since the 1990s in the UK alone. There have also been waves of triangle sightings in Belgium, France, Holland, and Germany. According to databases that keep track of mysterious crafts that have been witnessed, the Black Triangle is one of the most commonly reported by eyewitnesses. Mr. McGillen, a media journalist, has said that U.S. officials have in their possession a clear photograph of one of these black triangles, and said that it shows it rising out of the ocean, saying the insiders are aware of this photograph as they have gone on record as telling others about it, detailing that the craft was captured back in 2019 by pilot. Mr. McGillen said the following: "It could be a key piece of evidence demonstrating that we are truly in the presence of some other intelligence." End quote. At the time the pilot was flying an F-818F Super Hornet, the photograph in question was captured by equipment on board the Super Hornet, which is one of the reasons why it hasn't been released to the public. We've Inside is noting that the photograph is still locked up with U.S. officials who don't talk about it, and who have said that they likely won't be releasing it anytime in the near future. Those who have seen the photograph have said that it was captured by the pilot of the east coast of the United States and describe it as looking like a giant black triangle with blunted edges and having spherical white lights on each of the corners. Tom Rogan, a national security writer, has come forward and said that the photograph does exist and says that he's been told about it from insiders. He said the following: "It's the tip of the iceberg, but we will see more leaks of mysterious flying aircraft imagery and data in the coming years. You as officials should get ahead of the curve and officially release more material." End quote. It's for this reason that some have said that these mysterious black triangles don't belong to us, noting if they aren't willing to share a photograph or talk about it, then it's likely that these things are coming from an outside source. Some online users have said that it's strange because in the last few years, we've basically been told that many of these crafts are actually seen out in the oceans. And this has caused some to put forward their own theories for why this is. For years now, people have said that they've seen strange objects flying in and out of the oceans. With many dismissing these claims, it's nothing more than made-up stories. But with insiders now admitting that many of these crafts have been seen in our oceans by U.S. officials and the military, it's only caused more questions to be put forward, including who do they belong to? Why are they more commonly seen out in the oceans? What's out there that's leading them to fly miles out to sea? Why aren't these photographs being released? And ultimately, where are they coming from? So what do you make of these interesting photographs captured above the Large Hadron Collider? The research taking place in various fields each day is outstanding. From the latest medical news to the most out-of-this-world astronomical discoveries, there is plenty to get caught up on with the advancements being made. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 new discoveries. Astronomers find 2 new galaxies hiding behind curtain of dust. Sometimes things are not always as they seem. A group of astronomers have been looking for a sample of distant galaxies, though their expectations had to be reassessed when they uncovered 2 seemingly invisible galaxies hidden behind what is being described as a curtain of dust, tucking the galaxies out of sight. The researchers used the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, or ALMA, to conduct their research, tracking, capturing, and analyzing radio waves. This is a less often used telescope, as typically the Hubble Space Telescope is capable enough, though as it uses ultraviolet and visible wavelengths, the dust curtain managed to stay hidden to Hubble. The galaxies have been given the ever-so-catchy names Rebels 12-2 and Rebels 29-2, that we are aware of. The light from these distant galaxies traveled 13 billion years to make its way to Earth, though by now, as the universe has continued to expand, they are a whopping 29 billion light-years away. The study suggests that there could be plenty galaxies more tucked away and hidden just out of sight in the universe. This gives us lots of questions challenging our current understanding of the universe. The new research that between 10 and 20% of the galaxies from the early universe could now be concealed behind dust clouds. This study serves as a reminder to the benefits of moving away from the status quo, and the research team used the Hubble Space Telescope. We could have remained unaware of these galaxies for decades, possibly even centuries. Alien organisms could hitch a ride on our spacecraft. We are in an exciting age of space exploration, with space companies worldwide expanding across more and more impressive horizons. Though as we continue our research, looking at exoplanets and searching for life, we could run the risk of encountering more and more problems too. Some scientists have begun to express concern that alien organisms could become an invasive species harming us here on Earth, or that we might be causing problems elsewhere, introducing our Earth organisms to alien environments. Think back to your science lessons at school. We know that ecosystems are fragile. Here on Earth, humans have caused problems beyond repair, letting organisms invade new environments they would not reach otherwise. Australopithecina CD being introduced to Australia, where it stunted and threatened the eucalyptus trees native to Australia. Imagine if this happens on a much greater scale. We are not evolved and adapted to deal with alien biological threats of this kind. With Earth being in isolation by our nature as a planet, it is safe to assume that devastation would be even greater, having never encountered any organisms other than those that are our own. Could it be smart to stop trying to intentionally find and interact with alien life forms? Should we stop the search? While the idea of invasive species is frightening, scientists do acknowledge the risk of biological contamination like this is low, though with every mission out there it does increase. Realistically, the changes of an organism surviving the intense conditions of outer space while clinging to the outside of one of our spaceships and making it back to Earth are the harsh environment does limit the possibility, though that does not mean we should not remain cautious. There are some regulations in place already to help ensure the safety of us here on Earth and any potential life on the planets we could be visiting. NASA and other big space agencies have long been aware of these risks, and so planetary protection policies have been in place since the 1960s, designed to look after all parties involved. Some scientists have expressed concern towards private space exploration, namely SpaceX. SpaceX's aim to travel to Mars with the SpaceX Starship program, coupled with their lack of agreement to adhere to the policies in place, all has presented a cause for concern. Researchers are suggesting an increase in the severity of the biosecurity protocols surrounding space travel. This includes a focus on detecting possible contaminants early on, and having a series of procedures in place to respond to these threats quickly and efficiently. So whatever you think about alien life out there or are concerned about how finding alien life might go for us, there are plenty of plans, research, and theories in place. It does not stop the age of space exploration from being as exciting as it is. Slice of human brain is kept alive in a petri dish for 12 hours. A huge part of science we all want to advance in great leaps and bounds is, of course, medicine. A breakthrough study has seen scientists successfully keep a piece of human cortex alive in a petri dish for 12 hours, something that has never been done before and marks the potential for significant medical progress. Being able to observe and experiment with a 1 centimeter slice of human brain could lead to better drugs and treatments for diseases we know to be fatal. Emma Louise Louth, the lead researcher of the project, working at the University of Copenhagen, with the help of her team, was able to take quick action after taking a sample of the patient's cortex, making sure the tissue could survive. These steps involved the regulation of temperature and oxygen, cooling the sample down and making sure it stayed oxygenated. Then submerging the tissue sample into a mixture of ions and minerals that was designed to mimic that of cerebral spinal fluid. This all was intended to keep the sample alive, ready for observation. In a press release, Louth revealed that this cortex brain sample stayed alive for 12 hours. That is 12 hours of research opportunity we have not had before. This complicated breakthrough has bridged a gap between animal studies to humans. Louth said in her statement, to borrow an analogy from another researcher, mouse studies versus human studies are basically like looking at a Nokia 3310 when trying to repair an iPhone. They have the same basic functions, but there is much greater complexity in the human brain. Animal studies have been a point of contention for years. Animals are simply different to us as humans. While the brain may work in a similar manner, how can we accurately determine that the processes within are the same between a human and a human mouse? We already know that there are significant differences between the types of cells and receptors within humans and mice, so being able to use humans helps drastically. Louth and her team were able to look at the dopamine-enhanced connections between neurons in humans and mice. This means that the neurotransmitter we consider engaging with reward strengthens the connection between neurons in the human brain. In short, Louth and her team looked at how dopamine is different in humans than in mice. In practical terms, this has real-life application in terms of testing drugs. If we are able to keep these brain tissues alive long enough to observe effects, we will be able to see how the different species' neurotransmitters react differently to various drugs, meaning we know what will work best for humans, not mice. Of course, when studies begin to work with human brains, there are ethical considerations to be considered. And no, these concerns are not whether it is unethical to plunk humans in mazes and make them run for cheese. Is it okay to cut up, experiment on, and remove bits of a living human brain? Louth has assured the public that no pain is felt, no memories are stored in the tissue, and without all the other parts of the brain being connected together, there is no painful damage being inflicted on the sample. So, If we can perform these studies on emotionless brain samples, why would we continue to work with living animals? The opportunities this study presents in terms of both scientific validity and the ethics and well-being of animals is monumental. Not to mention the realistic difference this could make to medical research. Louth believes this research could help rehabilitation after a stroke or other acute brain damage where synaptic connections are lost. So what's next for this research? The University of Copenhagen scientists are now aiming to keep the sample alive for longer, with the next milestone being 10 days. It will not be long until this research begins to have a tangible impact upon medicine. What do you make of these fascinating discoveries? The scientific community is making new discoveries with each passing day, from new methods to new breakthroughs or brand new discoveries. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 discoveries you may have missed. Mysterious DNA results from the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin, also known as the Holy Shroud, is a stretch of linen a little over a meter long. It has a faint, difficult-to-see image of a man on it, showing both a front and back view of the man entirely nude, with the groin being covered by the man's hands. This image is very faint and is hardly even visible when looking at the brown linen. Though the image becomes much clearer when looked at in the photographic negative, what is so important about the shroud? Many believe the man on the linen depicts Jesus Christ, as some reddish-brown stains on the cloth align with the biblical description of Jesus' wounds following his crucifixion. Though the Catholic Church does not offer any formal comments as to whether the shroud is or is not genuine, the general belief as to why the Holy Shroud is so important is that Jesus was wrapped in the linen as his burial shroud following his crucifixion. The Shroud of Turin has been kept in the Royal Chapel of the Cathedral of Turin in Italy since 1578. Now the mystery continues to develop with a DNA study in 2015 revealing the journey of the shroud, based on the pollen and dust that it seems to have come into contact with. By sequencing these genes, the team is able to tell what people and what F***K they are plants the linen has been surrounded by. In a nutshell, it appears as though the shroud itself was made in India before beginning quite a tour of the world. It journeyed from Jerusalem to Turkey, across to France and down to Italy, where it has remained in Turin. One of the biggest aids in determining all this information was the plants, as some plant groups are native specifically to certain regions. For example, clovers, horsetail, chicory, and ryegrass are native exclusively to the Mediterranean, meaning when these pollens were found on the linen that the shroud must have at least passed through the Mediterranean. Dr. Johnny Barassia, a plant genetics professor at the University of Padova, commented, "Here we report the main findings from the analysis of genomic DNA extracted from dust particles vacuumed from the parts of the body image and the lateral edge used for radiocarbon dating. The team found plant genes not only from the Mediterranean but also some from the Middle East, Asia, or from the Americas, though the researchers have been careful in explaining that some of these genes may have been introduced after the medieval period, not necessarily during. Some of the researchers said that some of the notable crop species identified were grown by farmers and therefore were somewhat common in farming communities and agricultural systems in the Old World, namely chicory, common hop, cucumber, and grapevine. But what is the reason for the shroud to have such excessive travel? Simply put, the current belief is that after being made in India, the Holy Shroud then traveled to be worshipped with plenty of religious people visiting it as it passed through their countries or regions. Another working theory is that the Shroud of Turin was created in medieval Europe, but did not travel quite so much. With this theory, the presence of such diverse DNA is explained by the shroud being something of a religious attraction, inviting people to come and see it from all around the globe, allowing it to be contaminated by a broad range of DNA. The authenticity of the Holy Shroud has been called into question time and time again. Was it used to bury Jesus Christ? How was the image of the man created? Was it even made in the medieval period? The shroud was carbon dated to the 13th century. But while some questions are answered, we still have a long way to go to truly determine its authenticity and answer our questions about its creation. Whilst the Church offers no comment on the legitimacy of it, having been involved in the burial of Jesus nor on any involvement of miracles in the man being displayed on the linen, the Shroud of Turin continues to be an item of religious importance. It is exciting to find out more about its history, and the advancements in gene sequencing and other scientific methodology developments are what make this possible. Earth's water may have come from the sun. When we have been looking at other planets searching for life, one of the quickest ways to rule out potential life forms has been to question whether that planet has water. To do this, though, we tend to need to start a little closer to home and figure out exactly where our water came from. And could planets without water now somehow develop water a little later on? Now, however, scientists have begun to question a new, previously unconsidered source of water: the sun. Some astronomers are now suggesting that water may be the result of solar radiation carried to Earth on asteroids billions of years ago. The research was led by a team based at the University of Glasgow, and their study suggests the sun as a source would match with the isotopic signature of water here on Earth. Their research consisted of atom probe tomography, a method that allows asteroid samples to be analyzed. Some of these do carry water, while others do not. The study's lead author, Dr. Luke Daly, said, "The solar winds are streams of mostly hydrogen and helium ions, which flow constantly from the sun out into space." Also supporting this new research is the debunking of the current theories. Explained that the arrival of water on Earth via asteroids simply is not an idea that seems viable. The testing of the isotopic signature, which is essentially like the fingerprint of the water on Earth, does not match the fingerprints of the asteroids. This means that while the asteroids may have contributed, there must be at least one other source of water here on Earth. This Glaswegian team did show an isotopic signature matching with the sun. However, suggesting that the sun could be a contender in the form of solar wind. The overarching idea is that solar wind creates water on the surface of small grains of dust that then remains on the particles until they arrive on Earth. We still lack definitive answers. The research does give us another idea and brings us one step closer to answering a question that has baffled scientists for decades. Dense exoplanet GJ367b found. In 2021, a study was published from an international research team announcing the discovery of a new planet, GJ367b. The exoplanet is able to orbit its star in just 8 hours and has the shockingly high surface temperature of 1,500 degrees centigrade. This exoplanet is one of nearly 5,000 exoplanets that we know of today. To get an idea of its size, the mass of GJ367b clocks in at half of that of the Earth's, though this exoplanet has a diameter of a little over 9,000 kilometers compared to Earth's 12,742 kilometers. A lot of the research delving into exoplanets is striving towards one rather specific goal: to find a second Earth. Even though GJ367b's scalding surface is not exactly an Earth look-alike, the research shows that scientists are able to specify the characteristics of even rather tiny planets, widening the opportunities for future planets. Co-author Dr. Vincent Van Aland from the UCL Mullard Space Science Laboratory, London, explained that 2 different methods were used to determine the size and mass of the planet, both of which were based on the light from the planet's star. One was based on looking at the small decrease in the light from the star that occurred when GJ367b passed in front of it, an analysis conducted using NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, and the other looked into the mass based on the effect the planet had on the movement of its star. Following his explanation, he said, the study was comprised of 78 researchers, led by astronomers at the Institute of Planetary Research at the German Aerospace Center. The lead author, Dr. Christine Lamb, explained that from the radius and mass of this planet we can tell that it is a rocky planet, meaning it joins the ranking as a sub-Earth-sized terrestrial planet. One of the most significant differences between this exoplanet and Earth is the short time to orbit its star. It takes 365 days for Earth to orbit the Sun. In comparison, 1 year on GJ36b is just 8 hours long. This places the newly found exoplanet in the ultra-short period group of planets, those whose orbits are less than 24 hours long. All this information combined could help to give us some sort of clue into the formation and evolution history of the exoplanet. The other distinctive feature of GJ367b is the temperature. Being in such close contact to its star, It receives an extreme level of radiation, more than 500 times that of Earth's. It is exciting to see what else lies beyond Earth, and the possibility of finding a second Earth seems to be not too far into the future. New discoveries are constantly being made across a number of fields. They tell us more about the past and the future, helping us better understand our present. But what do you make of these 3 new discoveries? The world is full of the very rare and unusual, from our own planet Earth to the very farthest reaches of the cosmos. Whether natural discoveries are being made or laboratory experiments are being carried out successfully, scientific innovation changes and evolves from day to day, leaving us in a constant state of wonder and awe. So today, we will be going over 3 recent discoveries that came about as a result of this innovation. The Earth is crumbling in West Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas. The saying is a big part of Texas pride, and they will not be shy to let you know that the food, the music, the cowboy hats, and the state itself is bigger and better than anywhere else in the country. There is, however, something big happening in the state that Texans are not talking about, and it keeps getting bigger. While it might surprise some Texans to know that there are 2 massive holes in the West Texas desert, the people of Winkler County are all too familiar with the sinkholes, nicknamed Wink Sinks, threatening their country's surrounding area. The first hole appeared in 1980. In less than 24 hours, the sinkhole grew to be over 33.5 meters deep and over 33 meters wide. The sinkhole shows no signs of slowing down as it has continued to expand year over year. The county experienced its second sinkhole only a mile away from the first. Today, Wink Sink 1 measures over 170 meters across, and the Wink Sink 2 has grown over 109 meters, making it the length of an American football field. Researchers from the Southern Methodist University have studied the area surrounding the sinkhole, and the data shows the terrain is becoming increasingly unstable. Over the last decade, several studies including images captured by orbiting satellites show that while the sinkholes continue to expand, the landscape around them is subsiding as well. With every year, the 2 sinkholes grow in size, effectively closing the 1-mile gap between them. It is also entirely possible for new sinkholes to form in the area. Based on the compiled data, it is no longer a matter of if it will happen, but when. A collapse of this magnitude would be catastrophic to the surrounding area. Scientists Kinwoo Kim and Zhong Liu of SMU speculate that decades of drilling for gas and oil in the area may be to blame for the alarmingly unstable landscape. The introduction of fresh water into the underground can dissolve the Earth's salt layers, causing the terrain above and around them to collapse. While oil and gas extraction are a possible cause, fresh water below the surface is also a naturally occurring phenomenon, so it is difficult to say with certainty if they are to blame for these 2 wink sinks. While much of Texas is seemingly unaware of this inevitable outcome, the people of Wink and Kermit, the 2 towns in the area, are seemingly unbothered by the entire situation. When journalists from the Texas Tribune reached out for comment back in 2016, local Sheriff George Keithley was not worried in the slightest. We don't lose sleep over it. While the closest sinkhole is still a mile away from the nearest town, it does not directly threaten the locals. The more significant issue is that the surrounding area is densely populated with equipment used for oil and gas production. In addition to pipelines containing hazardous liquid, they may not be in direct danger, but they are in for quite a mess should the sinkholes converge or new ones emerge. Human monkey embryo created. Sparking some ethical debates within scientific communities is the latest embryonic development. On April 15, 2021, a research paper published in Cell Journal detailed the successful growth of monkey embryos that contained human cells. The research procedure, led from the Stork Institute for Biological Studies in La Jolla, California, saw scientists inject monkey embryos with human stem cells. The observation of the development and growth of these cells saw the division and growth of hybrid cells within a petri dish, with a minimum of 3 embryos being recorded who have survived 19 days post-fertilization. Stem cells are unspecialized cells in humans, making them of great scientific value, as they can adapt and serve various functions, apparently including the fertilization of mixed human and monkey embryos. Many people are calling into question the ethics and purpose of such research. Those supporting the research argue that the human-monkey hybrid named chimeras have the potential to be more accurate drug trial candidates and could possibly grow organs for human transplants. However, there are more rules to follow surrounding the use of non-human primates, like monkeys, than there are rats and rodents alike. The protection of these animals opens the researchers up to public opposition with regarding the ethics of their research. Despite there being some ethical speculation on the matter, this is not the first time hybrid cells have been produced by the team. Whilst the human-monkey embryo was first successful for 20 days after fertilization in 2019, the research was published in 2020. In 2017, the same team reported success in other human hybrids, including pig, cow, and rat embryos, all being grown with human cells. When addressing the ethical qualms raised by the public, Juan Carlos Espizua Belmont, a developmental biologist leading the research, explains that there is no intent to implant these half-human, half-monkey embryos into monkeys. The intent behind the research is, according to Belmont, simply to gain a greater understanding as to how the cells from different species interact with one another during these early developmental stages. In the development of future research, it is suggested that the human-mouse combination should be given greater attention, addressing ethical and legal restraints protecting the non-human primates. However, some have suggested that the success of the human-monkey hybrid is largely due to our close evolutionary history. We are very biologically different from mice compared to our evolutionary neighbor, the monkey. When developing the human-monkey embryos, 132 fertilized eggs were taken from cynomolgus monkeys. These were then cultured in laboratory settings for 6 days before injecting each embryo with human stem cells. The results are seemingly scattered. While some did survive the 20 days, other researchers are hesitant to call this study a success. One such researcher, Martins Arias, stated, "I expect better evidence," before explaining that things took a turn for the worse around day 15, implying that the things are very sick. Overall, this ethically questionable research has the potential for medical advancements, but at what cost? Do you think these primate hybrid embryos are smart or a flouting of basic morality? Viking sword found in grave in central Norway. In Norway, archaeologists have uncovered a Viking grave that is about 1,100 years old. They discovered the remains of a man lying next to several weapons. These elements suggest that the individual would have been a warrior and perhaps a left-handed person going by the position of his sword. Less than a year after the discovery of an intriguing grave ship, it is a new Viking treasure that has just emerged from the ground at Vindjul in central Norway. The burial appeared among others within a burial site, near a farm where archaeologists are conducting preventative excavations for the extension of a highway. The tombs exhumed would date back to the 9th or 10th century. At least 3 of them seemed to shelter warriors, but one of them was particularly distinguished. The specialists found an axe, spear, shield, and the famous sword. The fact that the deceased was buried with a complete set of weapons tells us that he was a warrior. Confirmed by an archaeologist from the NTNU University Museum who directed the excavations. At that time, most warriors were free men who owned their own farms. The researchers said that in the Middle Ages, the law required a farmer to get weapons. First, you had to have an axe and a shield, then you could have a spear and a sword. Although very rusty, the weapon did not fail to surprise archaeologist Astrid Kviseth, who cleared it all with the necessary precautions. At that time, it was important to rest near one's ancestors. The position of this warrior's grave would thus be highly symbolic. We can imagine that this burial practice was an expression of the importance of the family's ancestors to a farm during the Viking era. This suggests that the deceased was indeed part of the family that owned the farm, and that the graves nearby would contain individuals related to him. Although their relationship remains to be confirmed, as well as their chronology, at the same burial site archaeologists unearthed another intriguing grave containing the charred remains of an individual. Archaeologists found a pair of scissors, an oval brooch and colored beads, which suggested that this is a woman. But the unusual amount of remains unearthed surprised the team. Further research is being conducted. But what do you make of these recent discoveries and announcements? There are mysteries all around us, and we are fascinated by what we cannot understand. Inexplicable phenomena are discovered every day, keeping our curiosity piqued and the prospect of actually knowing the world around us a foreign concept. Every day it is possible to find something new and exciting, big or small, in the most extreme places on Earth. Some take us to different planets and tell us about the cosmos. Some tell us about our history. All of them leave us eager to learn. So today, we'll be exploring from the depths of the oceans to the furthest corners of space with 3 announcements and discoveries. Voyager 2 message 40 years after its mission launch, NASA spacecraft Voyager 2 sent a message back to scientists on Earth, which has now been decoded. Being the longest-running space mission to date, the faint signal sent back to Earth is truly incredible and has provided the most detailed look yet at the edge of our solar system. The message was initially relayed back to us after Voyager 2 crossed a boundary in space which marks the edge of the Sun's reach and the start of true interstellar space. This is no easy feat, as this elusive boundary lies a whopping 12 billion miles from Earth. Voyager 2 is only the second ever spacecraft to ever travel beyond the depths of the heliosphere. In other words, the bubble of supersonic charged particles emitted outwards by the Sun. Voyager 1 beat it out of the heliosphere by 6 years. Despite being launched a month after Voyager 2, as the latter took a somewhat more scenic route through the solar system. The recently decrypted signal is not the only pearl of wisdom to have come from Voyager 2, as its 6-year detour also provided us with the only ever captured close-up photos of Uranus and Neptune. What makes all this data so much more incredible is that scientists never expected Voyager 2 to make it this far and survive quite so long in the outermost depths of the solar space. Professor Edward Stone of the California Institute of Technology has been working on the mission since before its launch in 1977 and described just how much of an achievement it was that the NASA spacecraft reached this landmark and beyond, explaining that scientists were not quite sure just how large the bubble of particles was. The exact nature of the heliosphere up until recently has not been definitively understood. However, its boundary-like nature was confirmed by Voyager 1 after observing a drastic temperature difference upon passing out of the bubble. The temperature drop is now known to be caused by warmer particles from the Sun meeting an interstellar wind, blowing towards this boundary from supernovae which exploded millions of years ago. The longevity displayed by Voyager 2 goes to show the steady advancements being made in spacecraft technologies and opens doors, or so many more future discoveries to be made further in space than we have previously imagined. Octopuses, squids, and lobsters become sentient beings. Sentience, or the ability to feel phenomena such as pain and distress or comfort and relaxation, is something we as humans take for granted and probably could not imagine living without. While it is easy for us to know that we are indeed sentient beings, science for a long time has struggled to conclude the complex behaviors and nervous systems of animals such as octopuses, squids, and lobsters, also known as cephalopod mollusks and decapod crustaceans. Dr. Charlotte Byrne, a senior lecturer in animal welfare and behavioral science and deputy head of group for animal welfare at the Royal Veterinary College, was one of the professionals who reviewed more than 300 scientific papers to determine that these sea creatures were more likely than not sentient like us. This finding would mean that several practices such as their being boiled alive, or the removal of their tendons and pincers, are now deemed as acts of animal cruelty. Taking this report on board, the UK government has in fact gone ahead and ruled octopuses, lobsters, squids, crabs, and related creatures as sentient beings, meaning they are now officially protected from acts of cruelty by UK law. This includes changes such as live lobsters can no longer be boiled alive as several high restaurants may have previously done. Scientifically, the change comes following long debates on their sentience, which can sometimes be quite a subjective matter. Animals with backbones, vertebrates, are already classed as sentient. However, these sea creatures lack backbones, making the argument somewhat unclear. Animal protection activists are clearly pleased at the ruling, and although this may only be law in the UK for now, we hope there is enough scientific evidence to force other governments and states to follow suit. While this puts the UK at the forefront as a leader in animal welfare, other countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, and Norway have already banned boiling lobsters when they are alive. And while other countries such as the US have technically also outlawed the same, on other fronts our move to protect cephalopods and decapods is a first of its kind. In the US, for example, octopuses are not legally recognized as animals when it comes to federally funded research, meaning they are not entitled to or protected by the same animal cruelty laws as any other lab animals. This loophole allowing for inhumane treatment of octopuses will hopefully be rectified following the UK's move to fully class these creatures as sentient beings, able to feel both physical and emotional pain just like ourselves. Dinosaur tracks seem to show giant sauropods waiting on two front legs. The sauropod was a mighty dinosaur, often described as being an extremely large, quadrupedal herbivore with a long neck and tail, small head and massive limbs. Being so large and cumbersome and the general proportioning of its various body parts, a distinguishing feature of these dinosaurs was that they walked with a four-legged stance. This was never really disputed up until now, as they have actually been discovered to have been the largest of all the dinosaurs, as well as the largest land animal that has ever lived. However, recently their stance has been questioned following an interesting discovery made in Texas. Fossil footprints belonging to these enormous sauropods apparently suggest that they sometimes walked on just their two front limbs. The findings therefore completely confuse pre-existing conclusions that the animals needed all four limbs to support their huge bodies. A fluke, you may say, but alas, this is not the first time that sauropod footprints suggesting that they walked on only their two front limbs have been found. It is just a very rare encounter, says James Farlow at Purdue University Fort Wayne in Indiana. From the Texas print, stating back to 2007, to newer prints which also only show markings made by the rear feet, two theories have been discussed. It was thought these were made from swimming, as if wading with only their forefeet. However, it has since been decided that sauropods were land, not aquatic animals. Therefore, the only other theory which scientists seem to believe is that certain types of land simply did not track marks from the dinosaurs' back legs, as they likely exerted less pressure from their rear limbs. Whether these sauropods, the largest known land animals who have existed, waded or walked, or if there's some other explanation as to why some surfaces only show signs of their front feet, it is quite funny imagining them on just their front limbs. Either way, the mystery remains, and we still do not know for sure what caused these findings. There is so much more to learn and discover about our own planet, its history, as well as those beyond us, far into the universe. But what do you make of these discoveries and announcements? There are mysteries all around us, and we are fascinated by what we cannot understand. Inexplicable phenomena are discovered every day, keeping our curiosity piqued and the prospect of actually knowing the world around us a foreign concept. So today, we'll be exploring from the depths of the glaciers to the commercialization of space with three new discoveries. A massive hole discovered under Antarctica, bigger than the Grand Canyon. Researchers exploring the Ellsworth subglacial highlands, an ancient mountain range buried beneath miles and miles of Antarctic ice, have discovered a pit deeper than the Grand Canyon. The incredible find was discovered by combining data provided by aircraft satellites with ice-penetrating radar technology towed by snowmobiles. Originally an ancient mountain range, now layered over by thousand-year-old glaciers, the massive trench, or rather valley, reaches 1.9 miles deep, 200 miles long, and more than 15.5 miles wide. To put this into perspective, the Grand Canyon is only about 1 mile deep. Dr. Neil Ross, a geology professor at Newcastle University, describes the find as incredibly serendipitous. As the teams of researchers and scientists had spent 3 seasons mapping out the subglacial mountain range beforehand, yet had never expected to find this trough. They further went on to explain that while they had been able to gather data from the two ends of the huge hidden valley, they had no previous insight into what lay in between their data points. In the end, the satellite data was used to fill in the gaps, because although covered by several miles of glacial ice, the valley continued. Ross After analyzing their discovery and supporting data, it has been determined that this valley was formed millions of years ago by a small ice field, much akin to those of the present-day Antarctic Peninsula. A couple of years later, a similar quest found a large hole beneath the barren icy landscapes of Antarctica, in which topography has shown that there may be another huge hole beneath the ice sheet surface. This hole is not the Grand Canyon, measuring at only 0.6 miles deep, but it has been found to be longer than the Grand Canyons, making it incredibly significant as well. These sizable discoveries are quite literally, in more ways than one, go to show just how much about the Earth we have left to uncover, and that there is still so much we do not know about the planet we call home. This is especially applicable to the Antarctic, one of the largest land masses on Earth. Still pretty much unsurveyed today. Earth's black box will tell future civilizations about the end of humanity. Have you ever considered what will happen if or when humans go extinct? Who will outlive us? How will our histories and legacies be heard? What will become of the Earth? Well, scientists have begun constructing Earth's very own black box, designed fundamentally to outlive us all as a means to ensure there is evidence left behind detailing humanity's accomplishments. The massive indestructible box will record scientific data intended to provide a narrative to future civilizations as to what happened to humanity. The documented story of our rise and fall, if you will. The exact details of the project are as follows. The black box will be constructed from an immense steel monolith of 3-inch thick steel and installed in a remote location in Tasmania. It will use a system of internet-connected storage devices powered by solar panels on the box's roof, so that should the power grids go down, this box will still survive. The device will mimic the black boxes used in airplane crashes and cars, hence its name, and will collect information to relay to future investigators, but this one will serve the whole planet. Variables aiming to be recorded include mainly climate data such as atmospheric CO2 levels, sea temperatures, and energy consumption levels. It will aim to retrieve more socially contextual data, such as news headlines and social media use and posts. Altogether, these will be able to paint a somewhat holistic picture of humanity before its downfall, should we have one, as well as changes our planet and societies faced up until the end. Not only will future inhabitants be able to learn about us, but it is intended that this data also advises them against making any mistakes we do. Jim Curtis, the executive creative director at Clemminger BBDO, hopes that should life on Earth crash as a result of climate change, that this indestructible recording device will be there for whoever is left to learn from that. With such measures of forward planning being taken, primarily to explain and warn others against our potential downfall as a species and planet, it reminds us of the need to look after and protect what we can. Taking climate change warnings seriously, doing our bit to help ensure our future survival. It also is quite amazing to think that a black box, such as what we fit into various vehicles, will be constructed to cover the whole planet and provide such complex amounts of data. Blue Origin is awarded $130 million by NASA. To transition away from heavy use of the International Space Station, NASA is making increasing plans to lease private stations and has rewarded a hefty $130 million contract to Orbital Reef, a joint project between Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and Sierra Space. The hope is that the sun will be used to build a commercial space station in the low Earth orbit, or LEO, for NASA to then lease for astronaut training and scientific experiments. Orbital Reef was only announced back in October of this year and is the world's first privately owned space station. It is expected to become operational after at least 5 years or so, and its uses will range hugely from space joyrides, advertising, to anything else really. Not only this, but as a business venture it has already established that it will be scalable, so that as its uses evolve in the future, it can grow in size as needed at the request of private and government clients. The Orbital Reef project itself involves various organizations playing different crucial roles in its construction. Blue Origins will take charge of the infrastructure and actual development of the space station, while Sierra Space is responsible for the large integrated flexible environment modules. Boeing is then handling the operational details as well as supplying their Starliner crew capsule, and lastly Arizona State University is leading the research behind it all. Regarding NASA's $130 million reward to Blue Origin to help with developing this project and future commercial space stations, the overriding hope is that this triggers more U.S. private sector development of similarly commercial and independent space stations available to customers in both the private sector and government. This will only help NASA's shift away from the International Space Station, allowing them to conduct more of their work in low Earth orbit stations as they redirect resources to their upcoming Artemis Man mission to the Moon. Imagine being able to stay in nearby space stations just for fun. With space becoming more attainable, it is hard to imagine that our technological reach has many limits. There is so much more to learn and discover about our own planet, its history, as well as those beyond us far into the universe, and we are making headway every day. But what do you make of these new discoveries, and would you want to go into space? Scientific discoveries are being made every day and are responsible for much of what we know about the world around us, from the strange to the interesting to the damn right mysterious. Our understanding of how the world operates, whether that be the classification of animals that have inhabited the Earth, previously unknown to man, or fascinating space finds, is based purely on what we have been able to uncover and interpret about the environment around us. So today, we will be looking at 3 interesting discoveries and what they might mean for us and our planet. Bolivian forest reveals 20 species new to science. Sometimes it is hard to comprehend how many species still exist in the world, totally unknown and uncategorized by science. But every now and then a windfall of new species will emerge that reminds us just how much we still must discover about the world in which we live. Recently, a large scientific expedition went into the foothills of the Bolivian Andes Mountains called Cloud Forest, to the ever-present shroud of mist cloaking it, and revealed an astonishing 20 new species to scientists. The 14-day expedition consisted of researchers from both Bolivian and international institutions and delved deep into the 3,000-meter-high Zongo Valley in the Cordillera Real mountain range. The expedition encountered an astonishing amount of biodiversity within the lush valley and cataloged that had not been found in that area of the world before, and 20 that were entirely new to science. Among the species discovered were a new species of venomous pit viper, 4 new butterfly species, and the Bolivian flag snake. Additionally, the team encountered a species of frog known as the devil-eyed frog, which has only ever been documented once and was thought to be extinct. A frog known as the Lilliputian frog, which measures that had not been seen in almost 100 years. Additionally, there were 750 plant species identified, with 13 being classified as newly discovered. Among them were 4 new species of orchids and 2 plants that had not been seen in over a century. The discovery of so many species that had not been seen for decades, along with dozens of brand new species, gives the researchers hope in the face of a concerning decrease in biodiversity across the planet. There is now hope that other pristine natural conditions could exist elsewhere in the world, housing undiscovered and long-forgotten species away from the prying eyes of humans. One of the most amazing aspects of these discoveries is not simply how many species were cataloged during the expedition, but also how close human society is to the location, particularly the large Bolivian capital city, La Paz. Often, discoveries of this nature and magnitude result from daring expeditions into the far reaches of the wilds, where humans are a distant presence who have not begun to encroach upon the landscape. Although La Paz is virtually at the Zongo Valley's doorstep, the seemingly undiminished diversity of the hidden valley is unmatched, and officials have taken steps to work with the Conservation International team and La Paz to perform a comprehensive assessment of the biodiversity within the valley, so that the incredible amount of life flourishing within can be protected. After this expedition, the Bolivian cloud forest has certainly established itself as a biodiversity hotspot, and now scientists are concerned with how to protect this pristine space on Earth for posterity in the face of ever-expanding human society. Scientists just identified a new species of Dumbo octopus. The ever-increasing improvements in today's technology has driven many of the scientific discoveries of the age, and the discovery of rare sea specimens is the newest of these technological innovations, which recently allowed for the identification of a new species of Dumbo octopus. This species, which inhabits the dark depths of the ocean, is interesting because of its large, flapping, spear-like fins, and strange tentacles, which are webbed and form a distinctive umbrella shape when flared. Within the Dumbo octopus genus are many rare species that scientists have difficulty studying because they live almost 4,000 meters below the surface of the ocean. Until now, those species that were identified were only those who became entangled in fishing nets and inadvertently brought to the surface. However, recently a team with the University of Bonn in Germany were able to identify a new species of Dumbo octopus, named Grimpoteuthis imperator or Emperor Dumbo, by using only minimally invasive scanning techniques that did not require the dissection of the rare creature. The team was aboard a research vessel operating in the North Pacific Ocean when the strange-looking Dumbo octopus's specimen was inadvertently captured in one of the nets the team was using. Alexander Ziegler, an evolutionary biologist on the ship, highly suspected that it was a new species, but did not want to use the harsh and damaging process required to dissect and catalog the specimen. Instead, he measured and photographed the octopus and selected a small piece of tissue for later DNA analysis before preserving the creature in formaldehyde for the journey back to land. Once back in Germany, Ziegler used micro-CT and MRI technology to image and scan the octopus and observe its inner organs, eyes, and mouth. These techniques allowed Ziegler and his team identify the defining characteristics such as shell, gill shape, digestive system, heart, nervous system, and sensory organs that needed to be carefully inspected to determine if it was indeed a new species. And sure enough, they were able to conclude that Grimpoteuthis imperator was in a category of its own. The success of this endeavor has important implications for future taxonomy projects and means that now researchers will likely be able to identify rare and large without having to destroy the specimen by dissecting it. Previously, taxonomists had to cut open the organism that they were studying to remove and analyze its organs. In the case of an octopus, the researchers would then use chemicals to dissolve the tissues around the mouth in order to analyze the beak. These procedures often leave the creatures too dissected and fragile to be reevaluated should the scientists wish to go back and reinspect the specimen. Using Ziegler's method of CT and MRI scans to perform a non-invasive analysis of the creature and still be able to determine that it is a novel species is revolutionary for how taxonomists in the future will approach the dissection of species for cataloging. Additionally, in the case of exceptionally rare species like the new Emperor Dumbo, scientists can maintain the structural integrity of the organism so that researchers are able to continue to analyze the creature for form and function, whereas the previous methods would have left the specimen unable to be studied further after the initial dissection. Researchers hope that these techniques will soon become the gold standard for studying animals like the rare Dumbo octopus. Asteroid loops the sun quicker than any known asteroid. When it comes to the solar system, the closer that objects are to the sun, the shorter and faster their orbits are. For example, Mercury has a much faster orbit than Earth due to its much closer position to the sun. Recently, scientists have located an asteroid that has the second shortest orbit of any asteroid thus far observed in the entire solar system. In fact, the only body in our galaxy that has a faster orbit is Mercury itself. But what makes this newly discovered asteroid named 2021 PH27 so interesting is that it does not follow a regular orbit around the sun. Its path is highly elliptical, meaning that at times it crosses the paths of both Mercury and Venus and gets incredibly close to the sun during its 113-day orbit. In fact, this proximity to the sun is what will ultimately be detrimental to the asteroid. Already its orbit takes it along a route which causes it to reach temperatures of well over 400 degrees Celsius. Eventually, its highly irregular path will cause it to be either thrown forcefully out of its current orbit or it will be destroyed by the burning heat of the sun or a collision with Mercury or Venus. So why does 2021 PH27 matter to astronomers and researchers, especially if it is destined for destruction? Researchers use any scrap of evidence that they can get their hands on in order to understand more about where the pieces of the solar system originated from, and this asteroid is no exception. Scientists suspect that this was likely dislodged from the main asteroid belt which orbits between Jupiter and Mars, and the gravitational pull of the neighboring planets are responsible for its strange orbital path. Another theory postulates that, due to the angle of inclination, it might be an extinct comet originating from the outer solar system that was entrapped by the gravitational pull of the inner solar system planets when it orbited too close. Further study of the asteroid is warranted to fully understand where it came from and what it means, but for now researchers have been able to estimate that it's about 1 kilometer in diameter. It also gets much closer to the Sun than Mercury and likely experiences a large upside or precession as a result of the intense gravitational pull of the Sun. In fact, researchers believe that it has the highest apsidal precession of any body in the solar system. However, it will soon orbit behind the Sun and will be removed from sight until sometime next year. So scientists seeking to study it closely will need to pay close attention in the coming days to attempt to uncover all the answers possible. What do you make of these scientific discoveries? Space is continually offering up new mysteries for scientists and astronomers to unpack and attempt to solve. And although it often seems as though many of these mysteries are unsolvable, every day we get closer to understanding more and more about the infinite vastness that stretches out beyond our own planet Earth. Whether it is strange phenomena in our own galaxy or mystifying occurrences hundreds upon hundreds of light years away, scientists have set out to uncover as much as they possibly can about the cosmic world around us. So today we will be looking at 3 interesting discoveries and what they mean for our understanding of the final frontier. Strange objects punching holes through Saturn's F-ring. When it comes to space, there is truly no end to the mysteries that are revealed every day. Recently, scientists studying images captured by NASA's Cassini spacecraft noticed something interesting occurring within Saturn's notoriously chaotic F-ring. It seemed that there were large, mysterious objects about 1 kilometer wide that were penetrating the thin, icy ring, leaving trails of tiny ice particles steaming behind it for anywhere between 40 to 180 kilometers. These objects did not smash or blast through the rings at high speeds either. Instead, they made their way through rather leisurely at only 2 meters per second. At a temporary loss for what exactly this strange phenomenon was, astronomers fittingly named them mini-jets. Saturn's F-ring is notably dynamic and has intrigued scientists who were interested in unlocking its secrets, meaning that these mini-jets are another piece in the celestial puzzle. Astronomers have long observed the ability of moons such as Prometheus and Pandora, in addition to various other large bodies surrounding Saturn, to cause fluctuations and ripples in the F-ring, creating what seem to be sticky, snowball-like objects. Based on these recent images, scientists hypothesize that these snowballs, once formed, go on a journey through the rings, growing in size as they create their own orbits that weave spectacularly through the existing ice rings of Saturn. Interestingly, although this discovery was made fairly recently, the mini-jets have been around for quite some time. Scientists studying Cassini images from all the way back in 2009 first noticed the trails, which were incredibly tiny in photographs, and then on a scavenger hunt through all of the Cassini photographs taken in the intervening years to attempt to discover if the phenomenon was a fluke or something more regular. This image search was no small task, as the F-ring circumference is 881,000 kilometers long, and over 20,000 images of the region were taken during the time frame. However, at the end of the search, astronomers identified 500 instances of these mini-jets, which indicates they are a much more regular occurrence than initially suspected and certainly warrant further study. Not only did the images captured by Cassini unveil the interesting mini-jets, but they also revealed a lot about the surprisingly complex nature of the F-ring. Carl Murray, who is a member of the Cassini imaging team, described it by saying that these latest Cassini results go to show how the F-ring is even more dynamic than we ever thought. The F-ring region is like a bustling zoo of objects, from 1 kilometer in size to moons like Prometheus 100 kilometers in size, creating a spectacular show. And these ice trails certainly put on a spectacular show indeed. These images can help scientists studying space to understand how entities like Saturn, with its mysterious dusty rings, came to emerge according to the laws of the solar system. Additionally, astronomers studying Saturn and its rings can use these images and what they reveal about the mini-jets to better understand the flourishing activity occurring all around the giant of our solar system. For such a seemingly lifeless expanse, space boasts some of the most amazing occurrences happening without us ever noticing. Supermassive black hole speeding through space. A very, very large black hole is on the move and moving at a very rapid pace at that. This supermassive black hole, which is over 3 million times heavier than our Sun, is tracking across a neighboring galaxy at the astonishing speed of 177,000 kilometers per hour. Although luckily, this galaxy is over 230 million light-years away. And to top it all off, the astronomers who first spotted the black hole and have been tracking its rapid movements have no idea why it is behaving the way that it has. The reason that this discovery is exceptionally shocking is because not only did scientists not know that black holes were able to move as rapidly as this one, but they had only recently theorized that they could move at all due to the incredible force required to elicit even the smallest shift. This mysteriously moving supermassive black hole was discovered as support their theory, but they never expected to come across one as large as this one moving quite so quickly. Dominic Pess, a researcher with the Harvard and Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and Study leader, said that we don't expect the majority of supermassive black holes to be moving. They're usually content to just sit around. Consider how much more difficult it is to kick a bowling ball into motion than it is to kick a soccer ball. Realizing that, in this case, the bowling ball is several million times the mass of our Sun, that's going to require a pretty mighty kick. Persay and the other researchers on the team have spent the past 5 years hunting for instances of moving black holes in the center of galaxies surrounding our own. But how do you measure the speed of something that you can't see? After all, black holes absorb all rays of the electromagnetic spectrum and usually must be instead identified by their effect on the objects surrounding them. In this case, Pesce and his team focused their study on black holes that had water spirals spinning inward towards them. These orbiting water spirals are known as accretion disks and produce a thin beam of radiolight which can be used to measure the velocity of the black hole. Amazingly, out of the 10 black holes that were measured, only the one at the center of a galaxy known as J0437 plus 2456 appeared to be moving, and it was moving at the impressive speeds previously mentioned. However, although researchers were able to successfully identify a moving black hole, they have been less successful in coming up with an answer as to why that black hole is not sitting stationary. Although 2 theories have been generated. The first is that this supermassive black hole is the result of 2 black holes merging, resulting in a recoil of sorts that causes the observed movement. The second theory postulates that the black hole is one part of a paired binary system, and the other entity does not have accretion disks and is therefore going to be much harder to pin down due to its lack of radio wave emissions. Despite every expectation that they really ought to be out there in some abundance, scientists have had a hard time identifying clear examples of binary supermassive black holes, Pesce admits. What we could be seeing in the galaxy J0437 plus 2456 is one of the black holes in such a pair, with the other remaining hidden to our radio observations because of its lack of mass emissions. For now, this discovery is the exciting tip of a proverbial space iceberg, and hopefully future research will be able to pinpoint exactly why such a large black hole is moving so quickly. TOI 849b, if you thought that there was a large variety in our own planet in the Milky Way, then you should see the strange array that exists in the exoplanets lurking hundreds of light-years away from Earth. One such interesting specimen is the exoplanet TOI 849b, which was discovered in 2020 by NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite in a galaxy over 700 light-years away. This planet, which is about the size of Neptune and half the mass of Saturn, is unique because it seems to have no atmosphere at all and orbits extremely close to its star. In fact, it is so close that an entire orbit takes less than 1 Earth day and has an unimaginably hot surface temperature that is estimated to be almost 1,500 degrees Celsius. By contrast, Venus is the hottest planet in our solar system and is still less than 900 degrees Celsius. Studying this interesting new addition to the exoplanet catalog, believe that it might lack an atmosphere due to its close proximity to its star. They theorize that the boiling hot exoplanet is actually the exposed core of what was formerly a gas giant that had its outer layers and atmosphere blasted away by the immense radiation emanating from the star. And without the photoevaporation likely responsible for shrinking the planet down to a fiery ball, It seems that it would have a rather large atmosphere indeed. It is 40 times the mass of Earth, which means that it should have a large gravitational pull that attracts a thick, puffy atmosphere around it. However, because the outer layers are unable to survive the close proximity to the star, its diameter is only 3 times that of Earth's, indicating that it would be a much larger planet, up to 10 times the diameter of Earth. Was it not for the constant heat and unfavorable conditions resulting from being so incredibly close to its star, it is estimated that it would grow to up to 10 times Earth's diameter. Although scientists have yet to discover where this planet could have come from, it is yet another mystery waiting to be solved. And what do you make of these outer space discoveries? Discoverers in this day and age are abundant. Every day we find out some new vital piece of information that deepens our insight into our cosmos, planet, or history. So today we will be taking a look at 3 galactic discoveries. M87 jet photograph. The M87 galaxy, also known as NGC 4486, seems to be an average oval galaxy, one of many elliptical galaxies in a cluster within the constellation of Virgo. However, M87 holds a fantastic phenomenon inside it, an extraordinary jet of electrons and other such particles traveling at rapid rates almost challenging the speed of light. The NASA Hubble Space Telescope managed to capture images of the blue jet blasting from the source accompanied by the soft golden light of M87's many stars. M87's jet was first discovered in 1918 when H.D. Curtis, an astronomer of the time, found what he referred to as a curious straight ray within the radius of what we now know as M87. Technology when it was found that the jet coming from M87 possessed one of the most prominent, strongest radio waves in the cosmos. Since the 1950s, scientists have studied endlessly to try and uncover the many secrets of M87. Finally, after decades worth of research and hard work, astronomers figured it out. In the very center of M87 lies one of the most infamously feared objects in the universe, a gigantic black hole. This black hole, it is believed, has devoured a mass worth the equivalent of 2 billion times the mass of our Sun, making it colossal in stature. It is this black hole that powers the jet of M87. The jet itself comes from the gas rotating around the black hole, pushed upwards by the powerful magnetic fields that surround the area. The detected radio waves and extraordinary bright light that is visible from the black hole is created because the electrons inside said magnetic field swirl. Known as synchrotron radiation. Of all cosmic jets, M87 is by far the most well-known, giving scientists valuable insight into the laws of our universe. It helps that this galaxy is also the one with the nearest jet, meaning that obtaining information, though difficult, is not as tricky as when gathering intel about jets spawning in other galaxies. M87's jet is not alone. There is a myriad of similar extraplanetary jets of pure energy, and we are still trying to uncover the secrets of. Typically, jets occur when a colossal black hole devours gases or entire stars. The radiation reactions cause such phenomena. On a similar note, stars in their infancy are also occasionally known to create short-lived jets, but nothing as intense as what a black hole is able to produce. Unfortunately for us, M87 lies a whole 50 million the current model of the Hubble Space Telescope to see clearly into the galaxy enough to specify individual planets, stars, and objects. What is known is that the light captured on photographs is made up of clusters of an incredible number of stars, an estimated 15,000, thought by astronomers to have been created extremely early in the formation of the universe, making these stars predecessors to the second generation of stars. Pair of merging black holes are heading for collision. 89 million light-years from Earth deep inside the constellation of Aquarius lies a galaxy known as NGC 7727. It is within this fateful galaxy that 2 extra-massive black holes have been discovered a merely 1,600 light-years apart. Scientists believe that in less than 250 million years, these 2 colossal black holes will never before have astronomers seen black holes so close together. Other black holes we know of are far from one another, yet these seem to be moving towards each other as time progresses. The initial image of the black holes in NGC 7727 was found in Chile using the Very Large Telescope at the Paranal Observatory. These are also the closest two black holes to Earth, which is why their discovery is so thrilling for researchers. The second closest pair of colossal black holes is 5 times further away than those of NGC 7727, an entire 470 million light-years away from us, making looking into them a Herculean quest. The University of Strasbourg's astronomer Carina Vogel was the main researcher behind the study that discovered these black holes, which are respectively 6.3 million times that of the mass of the Sun. According to Carina Vogel about the prospective black hole collision, these processes in astronomy take billions of years, so we can't follow them as they happen. But we've caught this in the act of the merging process. This is a phase that we aren't typically able to observe very often. Vogel also stated about their discovery, the black holes are silent, they're not very loud, and that's how these have been overlooked. There may be many more supermassive black holes hidden outside of the centers of galaxies. Her belief is that if one accounts for supermassive black holes that lie away from the center of galaxies, then the estimated amount of giant black holes in our cosmos could increase to upwards of 30%. Supermassive black holes such as these ones are typically believed to reside in the center of every single galaxy, but when galaxies merge, their black holes, in turn, are set to collide. At the very least, this is the hypothesis that seems to be being actively proven true. Holger Baumgart, who participated in Vogel's study and is the co-author of her research, explained the process of black holes merging as the small separation and velocity of the two black holes indicate that they will merge into one monster black hole, probably within the next 250 million years. The merging of two massive black holes could be one of the reasons that the largest black holes in the observable universe exist. Moon orbiting solar system's third largest dwarf planet found. With the usage of the Herschel Space Observatories combined with NASA's various equipment such as the NASA Hubble Space Telescope and Kepler, scientists uncovered something extraordinary, yet another moon within our wonderful solar system. This newly discovered moon orbits the dwarf planet 2007 or 10 and is an estimated 250 miles across. Meanwhile, the small planet it orbits is less than 1,000 miles wide. Our solar system possesses something titled the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt, named after Gerald Kuiper in 1951, lies just behind Neptune and is what can be referred to as the cosmic graveyard of our solar system, the remnants of its creation more than 4 billion years ago. Gerald Kuiper predicted its existence a shocking 4 decades before its official discovery. The planet of Pluto is the largest planet within the Kuiper Belt, but other dwarf planets follow suit scattered around. Pluto's size is what allowed it to be found 60 years prior to the discovery of any of the other dwarf planets within our little corner of the universe. Because of their small stature, dwarf planets rarely obtain moons that orbit them, which is why the discovery that this moon circling 2007 or 10 exists is such a mysterious discovery. Astronomer Sabakis was part of the team that found the tiny moon when they were researching Snow White, the nickname given to 2007 or 10, and was discovered back in 2007 by the astronomers of Caltech when they were attempting to research further planets beyond our solar system. 2007 or 10 was found by the Samuel Oschin telescope and is the third biggest dwarf planet, third only to Eris and Pluto, akin to Pluto. 2007 RR10's orbit is unpredictable and lies 3 times further from our Sun than Pluto does, making it a freezing little planet. It likewise has a rotation time of 45 hours, an incredibly sluggish rotation speed compared to every other dwarf planet's rotation within the Kuiper Belt. Dr. Kiss states that typical rotation periods for Kuiper Belt objects are under 24 hours. Dr. Kiss's research included collaboration from scientists from Spain, the United States, and Hungary, and the photographs taken from the study show that 2007 or 10's moon is gravitationally locked to it. Some scientists expected it would fly out of orbit eventually, but instead it appears the moon traverses the sun with the planet. Dr. Kiss claims that the initial investigator missed the moon in the Hubble images because it is very faint. The insight provided by finding out that dwarf planets of a certain size enough gravitational power to attract moons is enough to help us find out how the solar system formed when it was still in its infancy. In Dr. Kiss' own words, the discovery of satellites around all of the known large dwarf planets, except for Sedna, means that at the time these bodies formed billions of years ago, collisions must have been more frequent, and that's a constraint on the formation models. Who knows what else shall be uncovered? Only time will tell. But for now, we can bask in the amazement of these ever-increasing findings that help us figure out our place in the vast cosmos little by little. But what do you make of these outer space discoveries? Our world has many interesting research projects taking place as we speak, and it is exciting to take a look at those interesting findings, from eco-friendly projects to celestial events to brand new species. So today, we will be looking at 3 interesting discoveries and projects you may have missed. Scientists just discovered a worm living inside poisonous sulfur caves. Our world contains some scary places, extreme conditions that could harm us in an instant. A series of caves in Colorado are one of these places. Filled with poisonous sulfur gas, if a human were to visit, the gas would be enough to be fatal. But the sulfuric acid that drips down is strong enough to burn holes through protective layers. Yet, despite these extreme conditions, life has been found thriving in these caves. Extremophiles, that is the name we give to animals and plants that manage to live in geochemically extreme conditions, those places on Earth where you would expect to find nothing. Scientists discovered a new species of cave worm lurking here. They are blood red and measure only an inch in length and are as wide as pencil lead. These red translucent worms have been found on the cave walls in clumps together. These worms were first spotted in 2007, but it took more than 1,000 hours of lab work to conduct all the necessary research and find the needed information to recognize them as a new species. Within the cave, these worms eat sulfur-oxidizing bacteria. Worms and bacteria are not all that is in the cave. There are also spiders, flies, beetles, and several other insects that are able to survive in these toxic conditions, meaning they have made an ecosystem they can manage from within their poisonous group. We know extreme ecosystems can form, like those we have seen in deep-sea volcanic vents, though it is estimated that these hydrogen sulfide levels are 10 times higher than those found in the deep-sea vents. We can see that life can clearly survive in a number of toxic environments, and food chains can exist entirely separately within this cave, sustaining itself. These frightening red worms may be small, but withstanding these conditions, they are clearly tough. China is building a smog-eating forest city. Pollution is something impacting every corner of our Earth. While messages to care for our environment often feature pleas to save Arctic animals, like our friends the polar bears, it is not just the Arctic that is suffering. In some places, the air pollution is becoming so severe that the air is considered unhealthy for humans. One of these places is Nanjing in the east of China. We use the Air Quality Index to assess the safety of the air. This uses a scale of 0 to 500 with higher numbers showing worse pollution. Even without the Air Quality Index, it is clear to see that there is thick smog in Nanjing, as in many urban cities, but the air quality clocks in at a whopping 132, meaning it is considered unhealthy, especially for members of the public with respiratory diseases and illnesses. Stefano Berri Archichetti, an Italian design firm, has a plan to help reduce the smog and air pollution in cities. The company thinks towers of plants could help bring us closer to a safer environment. The company built 2 skyscrapers covered in flora, bringing in 1,100 trees and 2,500 cascading shrubs on rooftops and balconies. Named the Nanjing Green Towers, they now stand tall, helping the city since their construction, beginning in 2017. Stefano Berri Archichetti built a similar 2-tower complex in Milan, with others popping up across the world such as in Switzerland. These towers are just the start. They aim to have a forest city created in Nanjing that features multiple skyscrapers like these towers, with lots of green space creating as much improvement as possible. These vertical forests are a brilliant idea. They are space-conscious, collecting 25 tons of carbon dioxide each year and producing 60 kilograms of oxygen each day per tower. However, 4.7 metric tons of carbon dioxide are produced by the average vehicle annually, meaning the towers only cancel out 5 cars each. This is why a forest city could take these slight improvements to a huge leap forward. These ideas and designs sound incredibly futuristic, They are becoming incredibly necessary. The climate crisis is happening now and change needs to happen. Plants and forests can help, but each of our actions count too. Mysterious cow blast in space in 2018. Astronomers observed a bright, short-lived burst of light only 200 million light-years away from us here on Earth. We do not know exactly what this strange light source is, just that it is highly unusual. It has been named the cow, and a lot of theories seem to think the cow could be the result of a newly made black hole. Black holes are formed when massive stars collapse towards the end of their life cycle. When smaller stars reach this same point in their journey, they become dense neutron stars. Neutron stars are largely made of, you guessed it, neutrons. They follow a supernova explosion. The life cycle of a star can be tricky to wrap your head around. The main thing to understand is that a star can become a black hole or a neutron star, and these are both likely contenders for causing the cow blast. The lead author of the study, Raffaella Margutti, an assistant professor of physics and astronomy at Northwestern University in Illinois, said that evidence presented from X-ray and ultraviolet rays emitted from the cow suggests could have been caused by a black hole engulfing a white dwarf. A white dwarf is another stage of a star life cycle. When stars similar to our own sun fade away, a compact core is left behind. The core is the white dwarf. While X-ray and ultraviolet light point towards the black hole theory being the correct answer, other wavelengths across the spectrum of light seem to suggest the cow could come from a black hole that is being newly or recently formed or from a neutron star. Margutti said, "We know from theory that black holes and neutron stars form when a star fades, but we have never seen them right after they are born. Never. There is a first for everything, and if the cow is the first observation of a star fading away and transforming into a black hole or a neutron star, then this is a groundbreaking observation. In the grand scale of space, we were relatively close to the cow event. It happened in the Hercules constellation 200 million light-years away from us here on Earth. The burst was first seen through the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS for short. ATLAS is a pair of survey telescopes based in Hawaii. So why has the cow been given such an odd nickname? ATLAS showed the formal designation as at 2018 cow with the last three letters COW, which were randomly generated from an existing formula, making cow the perfect name. Cow caught the attention of researchers for a couple of reasons. First, the brightness of the event. Typical supernovae are significantly less bright than the cow was. Researchers estimated the cow was a staggering 10 to 100 times brighter than what would be expected had it been a supernova explosion. Secondly, the burst faded away very quickly within just a matter of weeks. Ryan Chornock, co-author of the study and assistant professor of physics and astronomy at Ohio University, said, "We knew right away that this source went from inactive to peak luminosity within just a few days. That was enough to get everybody excited. Because it was so unusual and by astronomical standards it was very close by." A whole host of equipment worldwide was then used to gather more information and data on the cow, including NASA's Nuclear Spectroscopic Telescope Array and the European Space Agency's International Gamma Ray Astrophysics Laboratory to look at X-rays, the National Radio Astronomy Observatory's Very Large Array to look at radio waves, and the MMT Observatory in Arizona, and the Southern Astrophysical Research Telescope in Chile to look at optical light. So many different pieces of equipment operated by various teams from all over the world have gone into investigating and analyzing the cow. Hawaii's Keck Observatory telescopes arguably looked at the most important aspect, looking at the chemical makeup and shape of the cow. This revealed hydrogen and helium from within the cow, eliminating theories suggesting black holes and neutron stars merging. What is now considered the most likely theory is that the light of the cow has come from a new object, either a black hole or neutron star, taking in the debris from what had come before it. Associate Professor of Physics at Columbia University, New York, and co-author Brian Metzger said, "It took a while for us to realize what we were looking at. I would say months." He continues to explain that multiple ideas and theories were drawn up, having to edit and revise, often starting new hypotheses from scratch. We might not have concrete answers yet, not just for the cow, but for many of our astronomical phenomenon. But as we find out more and more, hopefully our theories will become increasingly accurate. All around the world, there are researchers making theories, studies, hypotheses, and making groundbreaking discoveries. It won't be long until we are making even more progress, finding astronomical answers, discovering new species, and building new eco-friendly towers. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? The story of Jesus Christ is an incredibly familiar one to anyone who is acquainted with Christianity and the Bible. However, the historical period in which Jesus lived was one that is also of great interest to historians and archaeologists, and finding evidence of early Christianity through religious texts and artifacts is just as exciting to historical scholars as it is to religious scholars. Whether it is undiscovered texts that shed some light onto the society and culture surrounding the rise of Christianity or definitively dating a holy site, archaeologists are always making new and interesting discoveries. So today, we will be looking at 3 recent Jesus discoveries and unpacking what they mean for both history and religion alike. Hidden Gospel of Jesus' Childhood. The story of Jesus Christ, according to the Bible, is a familiar one that has been told many times, but many people are unaware of the set of documents known as the Gnostic Gospels, which were compiled by the Gnostic people and first uncovered in 1945 in the Lower Nile River Valley. More documents were uncovered through the following decades, and there are now 52 identified texts, comprising 13 books of extra-biblical stories and teachings that are markedly different from what is contained in the New Testament. Although many Christians doubt the provenance of these documents and do not consider them to be sacred religious texts in any way that the books of the Bible are, others believe that they offer an incredibly valuable insight into what the world looked like as Christianity began to emerge. One of these texts is a shocking account called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which dates back to the 2nd century and provides what many Christians believe to be a heretical account of the childhood and youth of Jesus Christ from ages 5 to 12. When reading the content of this Infancy Gospel of Thomas, it is easy to see why Christians view it as heretical, as the Jesus portrayed in its pages bears little to no resemblance to the loving, gracious Son of God accounted for in the Bible. In these texts, young Jesus is precocious and often vindictive as he exerts his power and authority on the people around him and slowly learns to use his influence for good. He uses a young boy who destroys pools of water Jesus had created to wither away until he passed away from life, while instantly slaying a child who bumped his shoulder before blinding his parents. He also pushes back against authority figures in his life, including his father Joseph, to discipline him were ineffective, and several teachers were humiliated in their attempts to educate the young Jesus. However, these acts of cruelty are interspersed with gracious miracles, including the resurrection of several people and the healing of many others. Interestingly, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is structured in a way that is consistent with many of the teaching texts of the time, with 3 miracles followed by a lesson taught through Jesus himself. Many scholars feel that this text is an attempt to show the humanity of Jesus as a child learning to handle the expectations and powers that he has while following the teachable miracles formula associated with ancient texts. So why is this document important if Christians do not consider it to be an accurate or even a true retelling of Jesus' childhood? Despite its non-canonical contents, these ancient texts are still historical documents written by ancient people. And the careful study of these texts can give scholars and historians a glimpse into what early Christians believed that the childhood of Jesus might have looked like. Whether one believes in the events depicted in these texts or not, the Gnostic Gospels are still a fascinating historical account of early people, and historians are constantly hoping that more ancient texts will be revealed. Scientists find tomb of Jesus Christ is older than people thought. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, deep in the old city of Jerusalem, is an incredibly important and sacred place for Christians the world over because worshippers believe that it contains 2 of the holiest sites in Christianity. The first of these is the site where Jesus was crucified, and the second is what is thought to be Jesus' empty tomb, where he was famously buried and subsequently resurrected. The tomb, which consists of an ancient limestone cave, surrounded by the church that was built to enclose the holy place, is incredibly ancient. However, scholars have recently contested long-held ideas about exactly how ancient the location is. Previous estimates of the limestone that makes up the cave had dated the site to 1,000 years ago, around the time of the Crusader period, but more recent tests and archaeological evaluations place the site at over 1,700 years old, dating back to AD 345. This recent analysis was performed by testing the chemicals in the archaeological remains in order to determine when they were last exposed to light, and these results align with what is commonly believed about the location of the tomb of Jesus Christ, providing further evidence to support that this truly is the correct archaeological location of utmost historical importance to Christianity. An archaeological study performed slightly earlier also found that the tomb had never been moved, further strengthening the evidence. This study comes as the tomb was opened for public viewing for the first time in hundreds of years, so that scientists and archaeologists could work on restoring a shrine within the tomb known as the Edicule, which allowed opportunities for more thorough studies than ever before to take place. Historically, there are several ancient accounts was the Roman emperor who made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire and encouraged large-scale monuments for Christ, located and protected the tomb. Previously, because the tomb was destroyed and rebuilt in 1099, many historians had doubts about whether it truly was the same site that the Romans had identified and discovered. But according to this recent archaeological discovery, which updates the age of the tomb by approximately 700 years, the tomb protected within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre could very likely be the famous tomb involved in the Easter story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Dan Bahat, a former city archaeologist for Jerusalem, has stated that we may not be absolutely certain that the Holy Sepulchre Church is the site of Jesus' burial, but we certainly have no other site that can lay a claim nearly as weighty. And the site certainly boasts an impressive archaeological significance, regardless of its provenance. Hopefully future studies and analyses will be able to tell us more about the history of this amazing location. Pyrrhus found in a mummy mask may be the oldest known copy of a gospel. The carefully preserved mummies of ancient Egypt can tell us a lot about how people lived long ago, as well as elements of ancient culture. However, sometimes these mummies can reveal surprising glimpses into the past that make even seasoned archaeologists take a second look. In one recent instance, a team of researchers discovered a fragment of what is believed to be a copy of the biblical Gospel of Mark within the papyrus mask. Although there have been several discoveries of fragments of early biblical texts, this discovery appears to date all the way back to 90 AD, which is significantly earlier than any other gospel text so far discovered. Previously, the award for oldest fragment belonged to a piece of the Gospel of John which had been dated back to 200 AD, making this new discovery over 100 years older. This fragment was able to be dated by comparing it to the other texts and papyrus scraps that were found inside the mummy mask and then analyzing these results along with the handwriting of the documents. Carbon dating was also performed to add to and further verify these results. Additionally, some of the texts that were found alongside the Gospel of Mark have been deemed historically significant as well, including classical Greek texts, business papers, personal philosophical texts, and even copies of stories by Homer, the famous Greek poet. So what was a fragment of the Gospel of Mark doing inside of a mummy's burial mask? The answer is not as mysterious as you might think. The elaborate ornamentation and gold sarcophagus that many envision when they think of ancient Egyptian mummies was only typical of the very wealthy class. Those who could not afford such luxuries used a technique involving papyrus, glue, and paint, often using recycled papyrus to further decrease the expense, similar to modern-day merchants using newspaper to wrap items. It was one of these mummies that contained the fragment of the Gospel of Mark that so excited scientists, which was revealed through a technique that carefully removes the glue without marring the words underneath. This can be a controversial technique because the process of restoring the papyrus leaves the original mummy mask destroyed. And there is much debate about the value of ruining a historical artifact on the off chance that something valuable is printed on it. But at least in this case, the efforts certainly paid off, leading to an exciting breakthrough for researchers. Although the actual words that were revealed on the papyrus have not been published yet, they are set to be released in volume with other texts retrieved from masks so that other researchers can further analyze the results, hopefully leading to a final decision regarding the authenticity of these important documents. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? There are mysteries all around us, and we are fascinated by what we cannot understand. Inexplicable phenomena are discovered every day, keeping our curiosity piqued and the prospect of actually knowing the world around us a foreign concept. So today, we'll be exploring from the ancient times before our ancestors to the weird and wonderful phenomena in space with 3 recent discoveries. Bones found in Bulgarian cave are oldest evidence of modern humans in Europe. A new discovery in Bulgaria has brought to light findings of the oldest known directly dated human remains. Up until now, ancient human fossils have been found across Europe, estimated to be between 41,000 and 45,000 years old. No small feat in itself. However, dates so far have only been estimated by using surrounding layers of rock and sediment from the fossil finds. In this new discovery, the fossils themselves have been dated and they are more than 40,000 years old too. In fact, carbon dating techniques have consistently suggested that these particular fossils could be between 44,000 and 46,000 years old. The exact findings from the Bako-Cairo cave of Bulgaria are a tooth and 6 bone fragments. This region near the Balkan Mountains has long been known for being richly packed with fossil remains, and it is not the first time it has been excavated. During the 1970s, the human fragments found at the time were later lost. It has now emerged. Nonetheless, the determined ages of these new finds, now more accurate than ever before, support pre-existing theories that our ancestors moved from Africa through to the Middle East about 50,000 years ago, and then across to Europe and Central Asia. Not only this, but they are now also the earliest known evidence of the Homo sapiens presence in Europe. The discovery is even more remarkable upon further investigation. The team who found the human remains were at first only able to identify the human tooth. Jean-Jacques Hublin of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology and leader of the research team adds that the bones were too fragmented to initially make out with the naked eye, and instead protein extraction methods had to be used for them to conclude that the pieces were of humankind. Older human remains have perhaps been found in Europe. There are debates in the archaeological community as to the veracity of claims that a 210,000-year-old skull fragment has been dug up in Greece, only a year before the Bulgarian finds. If true, this significantly outdated any previous finds and wreaks havoc on theories of human exploration and travel. Many scientists do not quite believe that the finds are human. Instead, some think it's more likely that the skull is from a Neanderthal, the species who inhabited the continent of Europe before us Homo sapiens. There is more to discover, both in this region and many other sites in Europe we have not yet found. Only time will tell which theories are correct and when human life emerged in Europe for sure. Scientists may have discovered a new layer within the Earth. Geographers, geologists, and physical scientists get ready to see the rules rewritten. Your textbooks may have it all wrong. Although difficult to observe, geophysicists think they have determined that the Earth has 5 core layers rather than just the traditional 4. Previously, it was thought with confidence that the Earth was made up of these layers: the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. However, new data analysts have suggested that the inner core is not actually the Earth's innermost layer. Hence, the discovered 5th layer is being labeled the innermost inner layer. Quite literally. The lead scientists working this case are from the Australian National University and report that they used special search algorithms to track the history of the Earth's seismic activities in its inner core. By studying how long it takes seismic waves to travel through this layer, combined with models designed to predict variables such as wave speed in the inner layer, they have been able to confirm that an innermost inner layer does indeed exist. The research is no accident. Theories have long been circulating about a potential 5th layer of the Earth's core, specifically concerning the structure of the inner core. Up until now, though, there has been no conclusive evidence proving that this is comprised of 2 layers and not 1. While fascinating in itself, this discovery may have consequences to the narrative of the Earth's history as well. A new layer in the Earth's core means a whole new peek into the past, by analyzing this layer's composition of minerals and rock. So far, scientists think they may have found evidence as to a change in the structure of iron, which in turn suggests an additional cooling event in the Earth's history. While we do not know at all for certain what happened in the past to cause this, the prehistoric event is being referred to as an unknown dramatic event in Earth's history. One step deeper into Earth, one huge step forward for theories of the Earth's evolution. Who knows what we will discover about our very own planet next? Hubble monitors weird dark vortex on Neptune. In 2018, scientists observed a strange phenomenon near Neptune using the NASA ESA Hubble Space Telescope. It turned out to be a giant dark storm, measuring at 7,400 kilometers in diameter, hovering over the northern hemisphere of Neptune. Since then, the storm's movements have been tracked and analyzed, and for a while it followed drifting south towards Neptune's equator at the start of 2020. At this point, scientists expected the vortex to vanish from sight. However, by August of 2020, they were shocked to find the vortex doubling back up north to where it had originated. The behavior is peculiar, as scientists have studied Neptune's vortexes and storms before and therefore should be able to predict their movements with a degree of confidence. We know a lot about them. They are high-pressure systems which can form at any latitudes and then typically migrate to the equator. They stay intact for so long as they journey down the planet due to the strong Coriolis force exerted in the northern hemisphere of Neptune. However, the Coriolis force weakens considerably the closer one gets to the equator, and therefore once a storm hits this point, the external forces are no longer enough to keep it held together and they disintegrate. It turns out the observed storm of 2018 to 2020 did not venture close enough to the equator to lose the strength of the Coriolis force and thus stayed intact despite guesses made by simulated models. About the same time that this mysterious path change happened, a smaller vortex appeared near the original one and then proceeded to disappear. It emerged from the side of the largest storm closest to the equator, which fits theories of the disruptive nature of the equatorial zone. Although while a disruption to the larger vortex makes sense scientifically, the construction of a new one does not give it being located in an area severely lacking in Coriolis force. Explanations for the new smaller vortex are still disputed, with best theories suggesting that the larger vortex shed a piece of itself to redirect its path away from the equator. Given that this theory neatly explains two strange discoveries, it seems like a nice answer to things we otherwise cannot explain. And yet, we do not know for sure why things happen as they do, both in space, thousands of years ago, or in the deepest layer of the Earth. There is so much more to learn and discover about everything, and we are making headway every day. What do you make of these fascinating discoveries? The world as we know it can change at any moment, not just because we make new inventions or may have a pandemic interrupt our lives, but also because with each new discovery and finding we make, we change just a little bit of what we thought we knew. Whether that is finding lost cities in archaeological digs, finding explanations for strange phenomena, or answering questions that have long left us puzzled. So today we will be taking a look at three interesting discoveries. Alexander the Great's lost 2,000-year-old city found by drones. Alexander the Great may well be a name that you are familiar with. The ancient Greek ruler was responsible for building a huge empire spanning Greece through to the northwest of India, one of the largest empires history has ever seen. He was undefeated in battle, has plenty of places named after him, for example, Egypt's Alexandria, and his empire as part of what made the Greek language so prevalent. For these reasons, he is often considered to be one of the most successful military commanders to be preserved within our history books. Not only has his name been stamped into history, but also into the legends and mythology of Greece under a number of myths and fables. In 2017, a team of British archaeologists working with the British Museum stumbled across a buried city we had not known about before, had simply been lying unnoticed. Archaeologists were studying over a series of satellite photographs the American government had captured in the 1960s when the site first caught their eye as a potential space for archaeological study. It then took a drone flying over the area, all fitted with a camera and equipment that could gauge the outline of the city to confirm the location of the buried city. John McGuinness, the archaeologist who oversaw the Iraq Emergency Heritage Management Training Program, a government-funded project, said that Kuala Lumpur had been a hustling, bustling, thriving city in the 1st and 2nd centuries BC. In this time, it had been covered, making the area relatively unsafe and unstable. It is only relatively recently that the site can reliably be considered safe enough to conduct archaeological digs. The archaeological team had decided to process the satellite images they were working from in order to exaggerate and emphasize any contrasts in the colors. This process is what uncovered a large rectangular shape that was presumably a building hiding underneath crop fields. The drone was then flown out to the fields of wheat to investigate. McGinnis summed up simply, the drone yielded excellent information. By conducting this analysis in the springtime, the whole site could be seen and taken into account. This project was the first time in Mesopotamian Iraqi archaeology that crop marks were ever examined. The findings provided a relatively straightforward answer. Some of the crops were discolored due to their poor health. This happened to be in areas of the fields where there were buildings' walls beneath them underground. Kalak-Darband is thought to have been a city established on the path Alexander the Great had walked in 3031 BC on his way to one of many undefeated battles he had. This one being Darius III of Persia, taking place in Gaugamela. The area has clear Greek cultural ties, though thanks to Alexander the Great's empire, that was true of many places. The Greco-Roman deities and roof tiles made from terracotta do suggest that the very first residents of the city had been Alexander's subjects, and then those of his successor too. Other buildings have been found as well, one of which has a fortified wall and stone presses, used for making wine. McGinnis stated its early days, but we think it would have been a bustling city on a road from Iraq to Iran. There is still a lot more research to come from this discovery, even years after the initial search, allowing us to confirm and adapt our impression of the impact Alexander the Great had upon ancient Greece. Mysterious shards of glass are strewn across miles of desert. About 10 years ago, throughout Chile's Atacama Desert, several glass shards were found covering a large span described as a corridor of glass, reaching for 75 kilometers. There are simply too many shards of glass to be counted, though the strange fragments do seem to have a few sites they cluster around more densely. The shards are also rather varied, not uniform by any means, with some large pieces of glass reaching 50 centimeters across. Again, there is not a specific consistent texture maintained throughout them all. Scientists have reported that some features look nice and smooth, and others appear rough. It has also been said that the glass looks as though it has been folded or somehow manipulated to take a twisted shape, though, as we all know, glass really isn't malleable. Lead author and planetary geologist Peter Schultz, a professor emeritus at Brown University, said in a new study taking a peek at this decade-long puzzle, many have morphologies indicative of sliding, shearing, twisting, rolling, and folding, in some case more than twice, before being fully quenched. While we might have only stumbled across these desert shards 10 years ago, it has been predicted that they have been here since around 12,000 years ago, though we do not know what caused them to appear, nor exactly how they appeared. One of the first hypotheses was that the strange glass was due to a large meteor exploding inside Earth's atmosphere. A big air burst upon exploding then pushed the fragments of hot space rock into the surface of the desert, with the shards then melting the sand and soil upon impact. This theory does sound somewhat far-fetched, though in reality it really is a serious contender in explaining just how these shards got here. A few other places around the planet have also seen similar strange glass appearances, and meteoric explosions have often been deemed the most likely explanation. Why would the Atacama Desert shards be any different? That being said, there are some other explanations too. It is possible that these shards could have formed in a natural surface fire, hot enough to act like a furnace. While the other explanation is still being considered, Schultz and his team have said that the meteoric rock is a more likely explanation here in light of their new study. The team collected more than 300 samples of the glass and examined them under an electron microscope using a method called spectroscopy to look at the chemical composition. The team says that this analysis has revealed there is something extraterrestrial about the glass, that it is not entirely from Earth. According to Schultz, this is the first time we have been able to provide clear evidence that some glass on Earth is the result of thermal radiation and winds from a fireball that exploded not too far above the surface. Within the glass shards, There were thousands of exotic mineral grains, rarely seen on Earth. Upon the odd occasion that they are detected on Earth, they have only been found in extraterrestrial rocks such as meteorites. One particular mineral, extraterrestrial cubonite, has been identified in NASA's Stardust mission in 2004, which took samples from the comet Wild 2. Now, with the composition analysis completed, scientists have suggested that whatever it was that left those shards all those years ago may have had a similar makeup to Wild 2, with similar elements and minerals being within both. We might never find a specific answer to this question, though our theories do seem to be getting more and more accurate. Pluto's snow-capped mountains until 2015, we thought we were the only planet in our solar system to enjoy the gorgeous view of a snow-capped mountain. Though it turns out this pretty picture-perfect landscape has been observed on Pluto too. While these snowy scenes are stunning, there is something a little different about Pluto's winter wonderland. On our planet, the higher the altitude, the lower the atmospheric temperature, but on Pluto, the higher the altitude, the higher the temperature, due to solar radiation. So if it gets warmer the higher you go up, how is there snow and ice on top of these mountains? An international team led by CNRS scientists began to try and get to the bottom of this mystery. They found that what we had thought was snow not dissimilar to here on Earth is frozen methane. Pluto's atmosphere is high in gaseous methane at high altitudes, a conclusion the team came to via a climate model. This means there is only enough methane to condense and freeze at the top of the mountains. At the lower altitudes, the air does not have enough methane in it for the ice to form. This same research answers another question, explaining why the glaciers on Pluto are thick with methane unlike Earth's, which are water-based. There are, of course, loads of differences between our planets, and while some are glaringly obvious, others cannot be so easy to spot straight away. We are continuously able to find out more about our world, from hidden cities that hosted battles long ago, to finding mysterious glass origin stories, to searching for answers within our solar system. What do you make of these interesting discoveries?